When I first started talking to the BFI about doing a screening to mark the publication of the book, which looks at the black urban genre and the racial class dynamics and industrial dynamics as well, there are, of course, a number of films, documentaries we discussed that all have different kinds of tonalities to explore such a demographic. Now, the reason why Attack the Block was interesting to me was because I found was quite distinctive. It was using a particular generic form and tonality and method to articulate these really complex questions of identity, race, class, housing, nationhood as well. So with these things in mind, if I can begin with you, Jumayn, of course you were, involved in a lot of those dramas that were taking place between 2002, 2010. What was it about Attack the Block and the character of Hi-Hats that was particularly appealing to you as distinctive from those other films that we saw?
Nice question. Hi-Hats, when I got the chance to read the script, and we don't get much when we're auditioning, but what I did see of the character, it was just something that I thought that if given the chance, I could push it in a direction that really hadn't been seen before. Taking something that was so almost stereotypical, so well known in certain communities, in the places that we live, taking inspiration from people that I know and things that I've seen in my life, and then kind of trying to go, okay, well, what can I do with this that is so recognizable, but also almost, I don't want to say comic bookish, but a bit abstract, take it a bit abstract, but keep it grounded in as much reality as possible. And well, with good direction and beautiful editing, I think it came across definitely. But it was kind of, I've never seen a script like that before. Never, ever, not even close. And it was something that I thought, if I'm not involved with this is something that I definitely would have wanted to watch. I would wanted to see how it would have done and how it would have grown. And it's just because opportunities like that weren't really there, So seeing something like that, something so unique, everything about me that wanted to be an actor pounced on that, And thankfully, it came out pretty good. I think we did a good job. But it was just with the direction as well, the freedom to be able to talk about certain aspects of the character, bring them to life, and just kind of flex with them, just try them out. It was nice. You don't often get to do that. Not characters like this, not in a world like this, not with a story like this. So yeah.
Michael, Mayhem. So you must have been 11, 12 when you were in this?
Yeah, so I was 12 when I filmed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how were you cast?
I was a bit of a class clown, to be honest, when I was...
In a way.
In a way. When I was in secondary school, do you know what I mean? And one of my teachers, Miss Aurora Simpson at Pimlico Academy, was just a bit like, you're more than just someone who can make the class laugh. And I think Nina Gold was looking for kids at the time. And Miss Simpson was just like, there's an open casting, you should go and stuff. So I went to the room, I did an improv about, a SpongeBob SquarePants type duvet and why my friend should have bought it. And then I got recall, and then I think John, Alex and Franz were already cast. And then we just did chemistries with them, back and forth. And then I finally got the role. And then when I got the role of Mayhem, they were still looking for props. And then there was 3 other props. And Sammy was the one I liked the most. So I chose Sammy. So yeah, cool.
As I was saying in the introduction, one of the things that was interesting to me as an academic in exploring, the social dynamics of images of race and black men in film in a British context was the way that the film seemed to be a hybrid of horror, sci-fi, satire, of comedy. But I think because of its kind of generic framework, it allowed it to explore the more serious questions of race and racism and social housing and class that maybe the other films at the time were purporting to be about, but maybe didn't quite really explore them in ways that this film did. So for you two, as young black men at the time, how did you receive those narratives of race and class difference in the film?
Okay, so for me, being the age that I am, we've definitely witnessed all of these things. There's at least one scene, I believe, in the movie that anybody from any class, from any place in the world can recognize and go, oh, I've definitely seen that happen. I've seen it happen to other people. It's happened to me. And being able to do it in such a way, like you say, satire, comedy, horror, and it's so subtle, but it hits so hard. Like one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is when Moses is on the phone and he's explaining that he lives by himself and that he's young and all of this, because the preconceptions and the stereotypes that we're given, I say everyone really, that we're given in life, where we come from, what culture we are, what religion, things like that. It's hard to talk about these things in cinema, in film, in TV. Sometimes it can be kind of forced at you, but it's not their fault. They're obviously just trying to tell their story in the way that they know it best. Do it in such a subtle way is just, in my opinion, personally, obviously I'm a bit biased, but it's beautiful as far as I'm concerned, because even reading the script, again, there's certain bits in the script that we're just reading it, we're just going, oh yeah, this is great, this is an awesome scene, oh, that's so funny. And then I was like, oh my God, that really, really hit. Like, and I hope and I think that that's why it has such an impact on especially the youth, but so many different people from different cultures, like across the board. There's something in there for everybody. And I think it kind of represented everything that we are as a society right now, living in the 23rd century, you know what I mean? So I say 23rd century.
I think for me, obviously, as I got older and watching it now, because I haven't watched it in a while, you just realize how much care Joe had for the whole thing, and those little nuances like he's talking about. Like, for example, when they're going back and forth, overlapping, like getting the true essence of what it means to be a youth. Like, it's not like how we're talking now and it's bouncing. It's like overlapping, and then all of a sudden someone says something really deep and you're like, oh, wow. And then seeing like the nuance of those kind of complex kind of scenarios, like you were saying, of, a child being 15 living with his uncle, but having to grow up so quickly, and nobody knows about that until, someone asks, and even the way he just brushes it off, So I think for me, it was just realizing that, someone like Joe, who I do believe is an ally for people of the working class community, tell a story like this, for me, it was just like finally a bit of representation on screen for people who look like me.
I think also, building on what you're both saying, I always found that the character of Bruce was a really important character, really explore some of the nuances and contradictions of, the urban kind of existence. And I think from what I understand, Joe based that character a little bit on his own kind of childhood in kind of South London, and, who gets to kind of do those things, like the consequence. So again, the distinction I'm making between maybe some of the other earlier urban films, we call them, and Attack the Block is more serious politics, is it's bringing into kind of conflict almost those different demographics within kind of social space, and who gets to do what and when and what the consequences are. Was that your reading as well?
Yeah, especially with Bruce, yeah. Like, again, I love the use of things like language, when things like patois are used and slang and things like that. Like Bruce's character arc of his validation to feel respected and part of the group and whatnot. I think that's so interesting because I don't know, especially with like Carnival just going and things like that. A lot of things pop up in the news with like cultural appropriation and all kinds of things. And at the end of the day, being a Caribbean, being like, I love inclusion. I love it when other cultures and races and places want to get involved and they want to know more about it. And I think things like that, it's just so true. You know what I mean? There's something just so raw about the truth of it. But also, again, it's cushioned by all this beautiful satire and comedy. So it's just Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, again, I think what is amazing about those kind of characters like Brewis and Luke Treadaway's character
Sam as well.
and Sam's character is, I believe personally, knowing Joe myself, is that he knows that side, so he's able to bring a voice to those people who are relatively naive and the people who are on the outside. So for me, when I watch the film, I see people who are like affected and people are on the outside, and that social commentary and those levels of naivety are like echoing, the tabloids and the news and stuff like that. Because it was like really controversial for, in the first 10 minutes of a film, your protagonist is doing something that, he's robbing someone. That's breaking the whole convention of film. Usually the protagonist does something good, so we root for him in the beginning. But Joe's mind of going, actually, he's going to do something bad, but you're going to learn to love him because you're going to realize how complex his life is and how different levels of rules within this council estate or whatever background he's coming from affect the reason why he behaved like he did to Jodie's character. So yeah.
As a final question before we open up to questions from the audience, one of the things that I really explore in the book's chapter on Take the Block is it seemed to obviously be popular, but it wasn't widely publicised at the time when it first came out. It kind of went under the radar for a bit. And then we get to 2020 and Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, and John Boyega gives this quite famous speech in London talking around what is happening to black people. And it suddenly kind of assumed a different life or a second life and became circulated as a way of understanding the times of the zeitgeist. And what he was saying in his speech, regarding always being reminded that you are black and what is happening to kind of black people, in many ways echoed the sentiments in Moses' speech in the film. So I found it fascinating that we were kind of revisiting the film in many ways to make sense of the present. I mean, what were your own, I guess, experiences or thinkings at the time when you saw John making the speech during Black Lives Matter?
I always support anything that's positive when it comes from the right place. And I feel quite biased because obviously I know these people, but also I was quite proud, I think that's the right word to use, quite proud of how he conducted himself and the things that he said and how he said it, because it is so relevant. It's just a constant battle, it seems. And we have heroes that step forward and some of them get taken down, and not every voice is heard. Not everybody is or feels represented, especially in this world at the moment. So to be able to be brave enough to go onto the world stage and do something like that, that takes cojones, and then to kind of back it up with your own actions as well. That's another thing. So we're in I believe anyway, we're in an era at the moment of change, big changes. Obviously we've been fighting for it for how long, but now people are actually getting braver, I believe. Like we are starting to slowly become our own heroes and not look for validation or permission. And we're starting to realize this now. And as a group and as a people, and I mean as a human race, it's nice to see everybody kind of coming together over their common interests and the things that are the same rather than just always arguing. So, I'll be honest, man, since COVID happened, I've just been looking forward to what's coming next. I'm just like, the world is insane right now, but good things are happening. Good, like the more insane the world gets, the harder people fight for justice. So we're getting bigger and bolder heroes coming out now.
I think the first thing I said when I saw it was Moses. That was the first thing I said, because, and it just made me. It brought me back to the film because I was like, I get it now. I get why you were cast to be like him, because it's not. Sometimes I believe that characters are like maybe 20% of us is in our characters that we play or get to play in life. So for me, it was fitting that it was someone like John Boyega who was able to speak passionately for the people who are unspoken for, you know. So that's one of the first things I said. Also, like, I share what Jumayn is saying in terms of I was proud as well, because it takes a lot to put yourself on the line, and also when we are of service to people every day with acting, sometimes you question as an artist, what am I using my platform for? And when is the right moment to step out and use my platform for the benefit of others? So I think John is a different level.
Thanks. And just quickly to reinforce as well, it's a hard game that we play. Like, people obviously, you only get to see like pretty much one side of the camera, but we work really hard. There's a lot of long nights and hard days and meetings and a lot of loss and acceptance and things like. So when we come through and we make it through, well, I hope it shows for everybody, but we try and put as much as we can onto that camera. It's actually us, it's actually our soul, it's actually our legacy and what we have become and our learning over time. And as we're evolving, we hope that we can help everything else evolve too. Like, our vision changes, hopefully the world changes too.
To answer that question, I feel like with certain stories like what you've just seen, I think you have to take context into consideration. For example, Joe was someone from Stockwell, lived on Stockwell Estate the whole time. And the reason why he made Attack the Block is because that very first scene that you saw of Jodie getting mugged by some boys was Joe in Stockwell getting mugged by some boys. And he just thought one day, oh, imagine if the boys that robbed me, there was an alien invasion, but I had to count on these boys to save me and to save the neighborhood. So I think with stories, I do agree. I'm someone that if I look at a script and it doesn't resonate with my spirit, or it doesn't perpetuate my people in the right light, I won't do it. I will turn it down. And that's just the type of guy that I am. And maybe that's one of the few reasons why I've only done 2 films in my whole career. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But I know
excellent quality films.
Yeah, you know, and it's one of those things where it's like everything is down to context. You know, we're not just gonna create a melodrama about stuff that is not real. If you sit down with Joe, he can show you files of verbatim. Those conversations of the kids are real kids from community centers. So I think to answer what you're saying, I think everything just comes down to context. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, I would actually agree. I'll be honest, that was such a great answer. I don't really know what else I can say to top that or to help. But because it's a London-based story, obviously told in London, at a certain time in history as well. If this was told in South America, it would be South American, you know? Like, again, it's literally context. And at the end of the day, because just like Michael, I choose my scripts as well. What I saw in that script was more truth than I'd seen in a lot of other scripts in a certain way. I believe personally that a lot of the really key, a lot of the darker and a lot of the really kind of, I guess, hurtful issues were handled in quite a delicate way. They weren't forced on the screen or forced down our throats as a narrative. It's kind of like a backwards narrative, or an underlying thing, you should say. It kind of, the effect that it has wasn't like most other things. So I kind of gave it a bit of a bly. And again, understanding Joe, where he came from, the background that he lives, genuinely, like, he wrote every single line of this. Everything from the jokes to the slang to the patois, and even I was surprised at how much knowledge that he had of the world around him. Just because certain people choose to live on a certain level of life or in a certain place or something like that, sometimes I believe that they're maybe not 100% honest about the things that they come into contact with. but we all live in the same place, you know. So actually telling that story and just being as truthful as we could, I think that's important.
Hearing from Joe, it didn't do well here. But that's because, again, like breaking the conventional way of like making films, he decided to go that route where, you know, his protagonist was doing something bad in the first 10 minutes. And I think the papers were like, this is a atrocity. How could you do this? Da, 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 da. These are thugs that he's put on the screen and stuff. So people didn't get it. But then there was this huge kind of cult following of fans who were probably like my age, because when it came out, I wasn't old enough to watch it. So people were pirating it and watching it illegally and all of that. So sometimes the numbers aren't a true reflection of your film, because, you know, people are downloading it, watching it, like, you know, on illegal streams and stuff. So it was definitely something that marinated over time. I mean, Jumayn, I remember when it came on Film 4, and that's when it really clicked that we did something special, because people are on social media talking about it. I'm going down the street and people are like, mayhem, what you saying? Da, 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 da. And I'm just like, my name's Michael. But but still to this day, you know, some areas that I go to, they'll still call me Mayhem. Do you know what I mean? So, over time, I'd say. What about you?
For me, so it was interesting because when it came out, and I was old enough to watch Just, when it came out, it wasn't, as it launched, it did okay in the UK, and I was like, okay, just let everything do what it's doing. I started traveling the world. I think I was in Italy, and someone came running up to me, and I don't speak Italian, and they're going, blah, blah, blah. I was like, whoa, what did I do wrong? And they were like, no, movies. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, hi-hats. I was like, what? I was like, okay. So I started to see that it was, like you're saying, a certain age group, especially the youth, it was having this massive impact. But because of word of mouth, they're telling their friends, and then they're telling like older generations, and they're telling people from, and it kind of just started to snowball. And I don't know how it felt for you, man. Like it was like every couple of months, I was just getting more and more attention. I was like, where's this coming from? And it just, I think with everything that we've been talking about before, culturally, it just kind of hit the right buttons in the right places, and that everyone kind of jumped on it, but all for different reasons, and they were all positive. So
because we didn't have there was no Instagram or stuff, so we weren't able to know who we were affecting. Right. It could just be like a random. You might go cinema and then see someone in the toilet and someone's talking to you, being like, wait, do you act? And I'm like, yeah, I'm peeing though. Yeah, right. Do you know what I mean? So that was kind of like the vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of got to the point now where, at least in the Western world, like we're very well known, but I'm very proud because it's for a positive reason. I always kind of told myself, if you could be immortal, how would you achieve it? And I was like, well, immortality can come by obviously being filmed, being on the internet, whatever. But if it's in a positive light now, that's obviously the best scenario. And then I said to myself afterwards, what happens after immortality? And for me, that would be legacy. Like whatever you've achieved and whatever you've built, now you need to pass those good morals on and keep representing what you stand for, you know? So yeah, this movie has definitely done wonders for all of us. And I think it's because we threw everything that we had in everything. Yeah.
I mean, my answer might be a little bit shorter, but I think for me, I didn't know it was real until I saw you guys on set and I saw the big lights, because Joe's whole concept of like me and Sammy being the kids was, oh, we're just playing a game and you're on the estate, and eventually you're gonna kill something. We're gonna kill something, and we were like, every time we were filming it, we're building up to when we finally get that our moment of, you know, helping Biggs come out of the bin. So yeah, every day he was just trying to just like keep that vibe, and I think, yeah, it was just so cool to be, out of school, and yeah, it was just so cool to be out of school. I mean, I had a chaperone, and then I would see these guys, and they were quite a little bit young as well. They were in like college, and all of them were into like anime and stuff. So I honestly felt it was like the perfect bunch of people that I could learn from. So
Vibe, be chilled.
so yeah, it was like proper tribe. Like
For me, oh my gosh. Okay, so when I read the script, I've worked with like sci-fi and a bit of special effects and stuff before. But when I saw it was in this, I was just like, I was bouncing off the walls. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. The special effects alone, like genuinely, they had to drag me out the building. I just wanted to live there. Like, I love playing with things that explode. One of the things for my career is I like dying in spectacular ways, and I have a list of the ways I've died. And eaten by an alien was not on the list. I didn't think that would ever happen. I was like, this is so cool. And for me, I think it was like, all right, so I've heard about this moment, but obviously I wasn't there for it. When people must have been in the cinema for the first Predator, you see the Predator and they were like, it has dreadlocks, like that kind of feeling right there. Being able to, like, when we're filming it, I'm going to myself, oh my God, like when this comes out, like the UK isn't ready for this. We haven't seen this before. So I was kind of anticipating it, and it was just that element that I loved the most. We've never seen this before. Hood, aliens, I was, yeah, sorry. That was me the whole time. I had to literally just contain myself. Like, yeah, it was the coolest thing ever, hands down. And damn, like even through the other stuff I've done, like, yeah, I've loved them for different reasons, but this,
nothing tops the talent.
not close, nothing close. The first movie, I don't think we knew what was going to happen. Joe, of all people, probably knew obviously the most. Like, but we didn't know what was going to happen. The cultural effect that it's had on both the cinematic world and day-to-day life, I don't think we were prepared for. At least as an actor, I wasn't prepared for like the backlash of it, the positive backlash. But the second one, I hope it does what the first did, but better, obviously. But at the same time, in the time that we're living in right now, I don't know how that will be achieved. But of all the things to do it, I'd say it would be this. So I just hope it does, yeah, what it did, but just bigger, better, bolder, and braver in whatever way.
I think for me, I just hope that
You return.
not just that, but I hope that it's authentic. That's all I want. I just want it to be authentic, because if it's authentic, then the film will speak for itself, and everyone in this room will feel like I've been like represented. You know what I'm trying to say? So authenticity is what I'm looking for in the second film.
Well, that's a wonderful question and two answers to conclude this evening's screening. Thanks for kind of coming down this evening as well, but say a massive thank you to our two actors, Michael and Jumayn.